Hello, today we're going to talk about domestic violence. This is a very important topic that sadly affects many people, adults as well as children. One of the reasons why I believe it's important to cover this topic in this course is because anyone, including you, could be in a situation where you are being abused. No one should be treated that way. And it's important that we understand domestic violence and options for helping people to deal with it. You might also be in a position to help someone else who's in a domestic violence situation to stay safe and get themselves out of that situation. When we look at spouses who are abused, and it happens fairly often in about 1/4 of all marriages, and we see the abuse partner returning to the relationship time and time again, as oftentimes occurs. We have trouble understanding that. And perhaps we might judge that person and see them as being somehow weak or deficient if they keep going back. But it is complex. And what people need from us in a situation like that is not judgment, but support and understanding, so that hopefully they can get to a place where they eventually are able to get out of a bad situation that's not improving and that usually gets worse. It has been said that on the average, women who are being abused, and it does occur in women more than men, being the survivor of the abuse, that they return on the average 7 times before finally getting out of the relationship. Sadly, um, over half of the women murdered in one study that covered a 10-year period were murdered by a partner. Lenore Walker, a psychologist, developed a well-known model to help us understand domestic violence, in which she talks about 3 different stages of violence. Initially, there's a time when tension builds in the relationship and tempers begin to flare, that eventually erupts in what she calls an acute battering incident, when one spouse physically attacks the other. Of course, the extent of the damage that can occur in that situation is considerable and really terrifying to think about the kinds of damage that one person can inflict upon another in what ought to be a loving relationship. Following the acute battering incident, then according to Walker's model, there is a period of what she calls loving contrition, when the abuser says, "I'm sorry," and it will never happen again. Sadly, it does tend to happen again and again and again, and to get worse over time. So If you ever find yourself in such a situation, and I hope you do not, I hope that you will reach out and ask for help from people who might be in a position to give you support and help you look at your options. Communities often have programs available for abused spouses and their children, and even safe places where they can stay for a while. There are some other recommendations that are oftentimes made, like taking out a restraining order, making sure you have a safe place to go to if you don't feel safe, calling a hotline for domestic violence, calling the police when a domestic violence situation begins to erupt, and trying to be realistic about understanding that when an abuser apologizes and says it'll never happen again, it may very well happen again repeatedly and get worse over time. So one day you may be in a position to help another person who is in a domestic violence situation. Because if somebody is in that situation, they desperately need the support and love and care of others who can try to help that individual and their children, if involved, to stay safe. Thank you. I look forward to talking with you again soon.